She loved him so deeply that she forgot what it felt like to be loved back. Every time he was broken, she became his strength. Every time he was lost, she showed him the way. But one day, while helping him stand, she realized she had completely fallen apart herself. She met him at a time when his world was falling apart. His smile was tired, his words were heavy, and his heart was carrying wounds from a past he never healed from. She didn't fall in love with his strength. She fell in love with his brokenness, believing her love could fix what life had destroyed. She listened when no one else stayed. She comforted him when the nights were long and cruel. Helping him felt like love, and love felt like purpose. At first, it was beautiful. Being needed made her feel important. Being his safe place made her feel special. She gave her time, her energy, her patience, and her silence. She ignored her own pain because his pain seemed louder. She believed love meant sacrifice, and sacrifice meant giving more, even when she had nothing left. Helping him became her daily routine, and she never questioned the cost. Slowly, love changed its shape. Her laughter became rare, her dreams became smaller, her needs became invisible. She stopped asking for care because she didn't want to be a burden. She told herself that love is patient, love is kind, love endures everything. But no one told her that love should also protect, not consume. Every time she helped him heal, she lost a piece of herself. The shocking cost was not time or energy. The cost was her identity. She forgot who she was before she became his emotional shelter. She forgot that love should feel safe, not draining. She forgot that helping someone who never helps you back slowly turns love into loneliness. Her heart was full of effort but empty of peace. One day, she looked at herself and didn't recognize the girl in the mirror. She realized that love is not proven by how much pain you can tolerate. Love is not measured by how much you give while breaking inside. Helping others is beautiful, but when it destroys your soul, it stops being love and becomes self-betrayal. She finally understood that real love does not demand your silence, your exhaustion, or your self-worth. The most shocking cost of helping others is losing yourself in the name of love, and the bravest act is choosing to love without abandoning who you are. She believed helping him was the purest form of love. When he felt lost, she offered direction. When he doubted himself, she became his confidence. She adjusted her life around his emotions, thinking that love meant standing still while someone else found their way. Slowly, without realizing it, she stopped introducing herself by her dreams and started defining herself by how useful she was to him. At first, it felt meaningful. Being needed created a sense of purpose that filled the quiet spaces inside her. Every message he sent in pain made her feel chosen. Every moment he leaned on her made her feel irreplaceable. She ignored the small signs of exhaustion because love, she believed, was supposed to feel heavy sometimes. Helping him became her role, and roles, once accepted, are hard to escape. Over time, her own voice grew quieter. She stopped sharing her fears because his struggles always seemed bigger. She postponed her happiness because he was not ready to face his. She learned to listen more than she spoke, to give more than she received, to understand more than she was understood. Her world slowly shrank to the size of his needs, and she called that devotion. The danger was not in helping him, but in forgetting herself while doing it. She stopped asking what she wanted, what she felt, what she deserved. Her boundaries dissolved in the name of love, and without boundaries, identity begins to blur. She became a mirror reflecting his emotions instead of a person with emotions of her own. Helping him required constant adjustment. She changed her tone to protect his feelings. She hid her disappointment to keep him comfortable. She trained herself to be emotionally flexible, bending whenever he needed support. In that flexibility, she lost her shape. Love turned into emotional labor, and emotional labor, when unrecognized, becomes invisible sacrifice. She did not notice when her dreams faded into background noise. She did not realize that she was surviving instead of living. The more she gave, the less she existed as an individual. Helping someone you love can slowly erase your identity when your worth becomes measured only by how much you can endure, how much you can give, and how little you ask for in return. She thought love meant giving until it hurt and then giving a little more. When he struggled, she stepped forward. When he fell apart, she held everything together. She told herself that real love is proven through sacrifice, that loving deeply requires suffering quietly. What she didn't realize was that sacrifice without balance slowly turns love into a quiet form of self-destruction. In the beginning, her sacrifices felt noble. She canceled her plans to be available for him. She ignored her own exhaustion to comfort his restless nights. She gave her emotional strength freely, believing one day he would notice how much she was giving. She convinced herself that love was about endurance, about staying even when it became uncomfortable, about choosing him over herself again and again. As time passed, the sacrifice stopped feeling temporary. It became permanent. He grew used to her presence, her understanding, her emotional availability. What once felt like effort now felt expected. Her kindness became routine, her support became a guarantee. She realized that the more she sacrificed, the less it was valued. Love, when it is one-sided, slowly loses its tenderness. She began to feel invisible inside the relationship. Her pain had no space to exist because there was always something more urgent about his struggles. When she tried to express her feelings, guilt followed. She was afraid that asking for care would make her seem selfish. So she stayed silent, believing love meant carrying the weight alone. One-sided sacrifice creates an imbalance that love cannot survive. When one heart is always giving and the other is always receiving, resentment grows quietly beneath the surface. She wasn't angry at him for being weak. She was hurt because her strength was taken for granted. Love turned into obligation, and obligation drained the warmth that once made it beautiful. She started questioning herself instead of the situation. She wondered if she was asking for too much, if her needs were unreasonable, if love was supposed to feel this heavy. Slowly, she learned that when sacrifice is not shared, love becomes exhausting. A relationship built on constant giving and silent suffering begins to collapse under the weight of unreturned care, unspoken pain, and emotional neglect. She became his safe place, the one he ran to when the world felt too heavy. Every fear he carried, every doubt he whispered, every broken memory he couldn't escape, he placed gently into her hands. She listened without interruption, comforted without judgment, and stayed without conditions. Offering emotional support felt like love in its purest form, even when it demanded more from her than she ever expected to give. At first, she didn't notice the cost. Being emotionally available made her feel connected, needed, important. She believed that love meant being present at all times, answering every call, absorbing every emotion he couldn't carry alone. She told herself that exhaustion was temporary, that one day things would be equal, that love would naturally balance itself out. But emotional support, when it flows only in one direction, becomes a silent drain. While she carried his sadness, no one asked about hers. While she steadied his emotions, her own began to feel unstable. She learned how to soothe him but forgot how to soothe herself. The space she created for his healing slowly erased the space she needed for her own feelings. He found comfort in her consistency. She found fatigue in it. She couldn't be weak because he depended on her strength. She couldn't fall apart because she was holding him together. Love turned into responsibility, and responsibility demanded constant emotional availability. She felt guilty when she needed rest, as if stepping back meant failing him. The hidden cost was not obvious to anyone else. From the outside, she looked loving, patient, supportive. Inside, she felt drained, unseen, emotionally empty. She gave empathy until her own emotions felt dull. She offered reassurance until her own doubts grew louder. Emotional support without return slowly hollows out the heart that provides it. She began to realize that love should not feel like emotional labor performed without acknowledgement. Support should be shared, not expected. Care should be mutual, not one-sided. When emotional support is never returned, love loses its softness and becomes a duty carried in silence, slowly wearing down the one who gives until even love starts to feel heavy and unsustainable. She once believed that loving him meant reshaping herself around his needs. When he was uncertain, she became steady. When he was afraid, she became brave. She adjusted her emotions, her expectations, and even her personality to make the relationship work. Losing small parts of herself felt harmless at first, like necessary compromises made in the name of love. Over time, those compromises grew larger. She stopped expressing opinions that caused disagreement. She silenced emotions that made him uncomfortable. She chose peace over honesty, believing that love required flexibility and understanding. She told herself that changing for someone you love is natural, that adapting is proof of commitment. Slowly, the person she was before the relationship began to fade into the background. Love should never require self-erasure. Yet she found herself shrinking to fit into the space he allowed. Her needs felt inconvenient, her boundaries felt negotiable, and her feelings felt optional. She stopped asking for reassurance because she didn't want to appear needy. She stopped demanding respect because she feared conflict. Each time she chose him over herself, she lost a little more of who she was. The most painful realization came when she understood that love should feel safe, not suffocating. A relationship built on constant self-denial creates emotional imbalance. She gave up her voice to maintain harmony. She gave up her individuality to preserve connection. What she received in return was stability at the cost of authenticity. She began to feel distant from herself. The things that once brought her joy no longer felt familiar. Her laughter sounded forced. Her silence became habitual. She was present in the relationship but absent within herself. Love had become something she performed instead of something she experienced. Loving someone should never mean abandoning your values, your boundaries, or your identity. When love demands self-sacrifice without self-respect, it slowly transforms into emotional confinement. True connection grows when both people remain whole, not when one disappears to keep the other comfortable. A love that survives only through self-loss is not love, but a quiet surrender of the self disguised as devotion. She stayed because she believed love was supposed to be difficult. She accepted the pain, the guilt, and the exhaustion as proof of her commitment. Every time the relationship hurt, she told herself that love requires patience, that endurance is a virtue, that leaving would mean giving up. She confused emotional suffering with emotional depth, never questioning why love felt more draining than nurturing. Pain slowly became normal. Feeling anxious about his moods, walking carefully around his emotions, and carrying the responsibility of his happiness turned into her daily reality. She felt guilty for wanting more, guilty for feeling tired, guilty for imagining a life where love felt lighter. Love wrapped itself in obligation, and obligation slowly crushed the joy that once made the connection meaningful. Guilt became a powerful chain. Whenever she thought about setting boundaries, she remembered his struggles. Whenever she considered choosing herself, she felt selfish. Love, once warm and gentle, turned into something heavy and demanding. She was no longer loving freely, she was loving out of fear, fear of hurting him, fear of being blamed, fear of being the reason he broke again. Exhaustion followed her everywhere. Emotional fatigue drained her enthusiasm, her creativity, and her sense of self-worth. She gave without rest and cared without being cared for. Love stopped feeling like partnership and started feeling like survival. She wondered why she felt so empty while giving so much, why her heart felt tired instead of full. True love does not survive on constant pain. It does not grow in guilt or thrive on exhaustion. Love is meant to be a place of safety, where both hearts can rest, not a battlefield where one person is always wounded. When love demands endless sacrifice and offers no emotional shelter, it loses its meaning. She finally understood that love should not hurt more than it heals. It should not require her to abandon herself to keep someone else comfortable. Love that survives on pain, guilt, and exhaustion slowly destroys the very heart that tries to protect it, leaving behind a connection that looks like love but feels like quiet suffering and emotional loss.